There's a term people often use: destroying evidence. It refers to the act of completely wiping out any trace of a crime, making sure nothing is left behind, not even a hint. But no matter how hard someone tries, sooner or later the truth tends to rise to the surface, just like something slowly floating up from underwater. Hey everyone, welcome back. Something very similar has happened to countless planes and ships from World War II that once seemed to have vanished without a trace into the depths of the ocean. For many decades, these wrecks kept their secrets buried, hidden away from the world above. And now, we in the modern age are finally able to piece together, even just a little, what actually happened back then by following the few remaining clues. Thanks for joining us here on our channel. Let's get started and dive right in. The story of John McGrath. Second Lieutenant John McGrath, a pilot of the carrier-based fighter F4U Corsair, serving in the U.S. Marine Corps, disappeared without a trace on July 21, 1945. That day was the last time this young pilot was ever seen, marking his final known sighting before vanishing. His last flight took place near Iriomote Island, located at the southern edge of the Japanese archipelago in the Okinawa Prefecture. The single-seat fighter-bomber F4U Corsair, piloted by Lieutenant McGrath, turned out to be the only aircraft that failed to return from its mission that day. According to a combat report filed at the time, his plane didn't survive the steep dive maneuver during an attack run and ultimately crashed into the sea. In the 1980s, an American fighter jet was discovered resting on a coral reef at a depth of around 80 feet, just off the coast of Iriomote Island. News of the aircraft's discovery was officially recorded in a report issued by the United States Department of Defense. However, that report included no details whatsoever about the plane's specific model, let alone any information about the crew who might have been on board. So at that point, Second Lieutenant John McGrath was still officially considered missing in action. It wasn't until the year 2019 that the mystery surrounding McGrath's disappearance was finally brought to light. A non-profit organization called Project Recover, which searches for missing American military personnel in the Pacific, conducted a dive investigation in the area. Its founders, Justin Talon and Michael McCallany, visited the crash site themselves and were able to conclusively prove that the wreckage belonged to the F4U Corsair flown by Lieutenant McGrath. Even though decades had passed, fragments of the aircraft were surprisingly well preserved, offering solid evidence of the plane's identity. Among the identifiable remains were a Pratt & Whitney engine made in Connecticut, a landing gear assembly, part of a wing, and the mounted machine guns housed inside the wing structure. Then finally, in 2020, a diver recovered skeletal remains from the wreck, and forensic analysis confirmed without a doubt that they belonged to John McGrath, solving the mystery once and for all. Aside from the moral importance, this official acknowledgement of McGrath's death granted his surviving family legal status and recognition from the U.S. Department of Defense. A group of 4 lifelong friends who had posed beside him in an old photo, taken back in their school days, must have found comfort and closure in knowing the truth was finally uncovered. Sadly, by the time this 75-year-long story came to an end, the only person in that faded photo still alive was Jack Marshall, who was 95 years old. Germany's first aircraft carrier. Before we go any further, we need to make one thing very clear. This story is about Nazi Germany's first and, as it turned out, only aircraft carrier. Up until that point in history, the German Navy had never included a ship of this class in its entire fleet. Around the same time, just before World War II broke out, the United States already had 8 carriers, while Britain and Japan each had 6 and France had 1. According to the Anglo-German Naval Agreement, Germany wasn't even allowed to build an aircraft carrier until 1935, when it was finally granted permission to construct one with a displacement of up to 38,500 tons. Thankfully, what we now know as Hitler's Plan Z never became reality. But that plan actually called for 4 aircraft carriers to be built by 1945. As a result, in 1938, one such carrier was launched and named Graf Zeppelin in honor of Count Ferdinand von Zeppelin, the pioneer of rigid airships. However, the project constantly suffered from a lack of funding, which made construction a slow and uncertain process. Priorities shifted, and because of that, the Graf Zeppelin never once saw active service or participated in any naval combat before the war ended. Still, by 1945, the carrier had grown into a formidable war machine, and experts estimated that it was about 92% ready for battle. It measured 861 feet long and 119 feet wide, and was capable of launching up to 9 planes every 30 seconds using its 3 catapults. Its aircraft hangar could hold a total of 41 planes, including 18 torpedo bombers, 13 dive bombers, and 10 fighters. Then came March of 1945, when the Germans were forced to scuttle this massive steel colossus themselves. But whether it was hesitation to destroy such a valuable asset or simply a lack of technical capability, the attempt was only partially successful. Most of the ship remained above the waterline, while inside the cargo hold sat lower than the surrounding sea level. This made it fairly easy for the Soviets, who took possession of the ship after the war under treaty terms, to raise and repair it with minimal effort. The vessel was added to the Baltic Fleet, and though its name was slightly altered, it still entered Poland's Gdańsk port at least once as Zeppelin. Had it not been for new agreements among Allied powers, the Zeppelin might have become the Soviet Union's first operational aircraft carrier. Instead, in 1947, Soviet command gave the order to sink it a second time. This second sinking attempt was much more effective than the first and left no doubts about the outcome. The carrier was used for weapons testing and ultimately sent to the bottom of the Baltic Sea off the coast of Poland, where it rests at a depth of 820 feet. For decades afterward, though, this was nothing more than the educated speculation among maritime insiders. There was no official statement about the fate of this ill-fated carrier for a full 60 years. It wasn't until 2006 that Polish researchers finally discovered the Graf Zeppelin, located about 53 miles from the port of Gdańsk. Around the same time, a theory emerged, based on numerous photographs, that Soviet Marines had used the Zeppelin for training to sink American and British carriers, their potential future enemies. Polish divers found heavy damage to the ship's bow and center section, as if it had been struck multiple times by torpedoes or bombs. Even with this evidence, naval investigators still haven't been able to reach an official, final conclusion that confirms the wreck is truly the Graf Zeppelin. They claim to be 99.9% sure, but that tiny sliver of doubt still remains. In naval tradition, absolute identification is only achieved when the ship's bell, with its name engraved, is recovered and presented. To make things more complicated, any efforts to recover the wreck have been actively obstructed by Russia, which views itself as the legal successor to the Soviet Union. To prevent overzealous divers from getting too close and to avoid any possible accidents, Polish authorities are currently monitoring the site of the sunken ship. There's ongoing concern that explosives or other hazardous materials may still be on board, posing a danger to anyone who ventures near. Neptune's treasure. Throughout the relatively short history of human civilization, an astonishing number of ships have met their fate beneath the waves. And along with those ships, countless treasures have been lost to the depths, claimed by the undersea kingdom ruled by Neptune himself. The time when the largest amount of treasure sank beneath the ocean was likely during World War II, when maritime conflict reached its peak. Only a tiny fraction of that sunken wealth was ever successfully discovered and brought back to the surface after the war ended. For example, several tons of silver were recovered from the wreck of the steamship known as the City of Cairo. That ship was torpedoed and sunk by a German submarine on November 6, 1942, about 480 miles south of St. Helena in the South Atlantic Ocean. The city of Cairo had been carrying several tons of silver coins and ingots from Bombay to Britain, all intended for use by the British military. Ever since the ship went down, its valuable cargo and most of its crew had been listed as missing without a trace. 70 years passed before the globally renowned company Deep Ocean Search finally took on the mission in 2011. Even with their cutting-edge scanning technology, the search effort initially ran into repeated setbacks and saw no signs of success for quite a while. It was later discovered that the ship had broken into 2 pieces and was buried beneath a thick layer of seabed mud, which made the scanners mistake the wreck for a gentle underwater hill. The true location of the shipwreck wasn't positively identified until the year 2013. After an extensive recovery operation, several dozen tons of silver coins and ingots were successfully lifted from a depth of 16,900 feet. According to members of the Deep Ocean Search Team, the entire operation was plagued by countless technical difficulties, malfunctions, and emergency situations. Up until then, similar deep-sea recovery missions had only been attempted at depths of less than 13,000 feet. For a time, the entire mission, including the recovery plan itself, was kept strictly classified. Permission to publicly share the results was finally granted by the UK's Department for Transport in 2015. That announcement came only after the recovered coins had been melted down, converted back into cash, and deposited into the National Treasury. According to The Guardian, the estimated total value of the treasure retrieved from beneath the sea was a staggering 47 million euros. After the salvage operation was completed, a monument was placed at the site to honor the 104 crew members of the city of Cairo who lost their lives when the ship went down. As we've seen, time not only fades the memories of war, it also brings long-buried secrets back into the light, even if they've been hidden deep beneath the ocean floor. Can you even begin to imagine how many other unsolved mysteries from that long-past war still lie waiting, buried in the unreachable depths of oceans around the world? If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up and share it on your social media to help us grow. Thanks so much for watching. We truly appreciate your time. Until we meet again, take care and goodbye.